Marcus Webb was on his knees in the cereal aisle when the first girl spoke. He had been reaching for the last box of honey oats on the bottom shelf, the same brand his daughter Aria had eaten every single morning since she was 4 years old, the same brand he drove 20 minutes out of his way every week just to keep in stock, when a small hand touched his shoulder and a voice, small, careful, almost apologetic, said, "Excuse me, sir." He turned. 3 girls stood in front of him, identical, maybe 8 or 9 years old, with large hazel eyes, soft auburn curls pulled back with yellow scrunchies, and pale freckled skin dusted across their noses and cheeks. They had the same careful posture, like they had been taught to stand straight before they had been taught to tie their shoes. Triplets. He registered that immediately because his brain did what it always did. It sorted, it organized, it filed, and then it stopped completely. Because the one in the middle pointed at his left forearm and said, "Our mother has a tattoo just like yours." Marcus froze. Not the polite kind of freeze, not the kind where you pause and smile and say, "Oh really, what a coincidence." The kind where every single nerve in your body fires at once and then goes silent. The kind where your lungs forget they have a job to do. He looked down at his forearm, at the tattoo he had carried for 11 years. A compass rose with a single word written beneath it in small, precise letters, Ezra. The name of the woman he had loved, the woman who had disappeared. "What did you say?" he whispered. The girl in the middle, she had a small scar above her left eyebrow, he noticed, the way you notice details when your body has gone into survival mode, said it again, steady and clear. "Our mother has a tattoo just like yours, a compass, with a name under it." What name? His voice came out wrong, too tight, too low. The girls looked at each other. A silent conversation passed between them, the kind that only people who have shared a womb can have. "Marcus," the one on the left said quietly. And Marcus Webb sat down on the floor of the cereal aisle of a Kroger supermarket in Columbus, Ohio, because his legs simply stopped working. If this story already has you feeling something, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Stories like this drop every week, and you do not want to miss a single one. He didn't know how long he sat there. Long enough for a store employee to appear at the end of the aisle with a concerned look. Long enough for the 3 girls to crouch down in front of him, all 3 of them, in perfect unison, studying his face with those enormous hazel eyes. "Are you okay?" the one on the right asked. He had been a single father for 6 years. He knew how to hold it together in front of children. He pulled everything inside himself, locked it down, and nodded. "I'm okay," he said. "I'm sorry, you surprised me." He pressed his palm flat against the linoleum floor and pushed himself back to his feet. "What are your names?" "I'm Zoe," said the one in the middle, the one with the scar. "I'm Riley," said the one on the left. "I'm Cora," said the one on the right. "Zoe, Riley, Cora," he repeated, because saying their names out loud gave him something to hold on to. "Where is your mother right now?" Another silent look between them. "She's in aisle 7, Cora said. "We wandered off. She's going to be so mad." "We should go back," Riley said, but none of them moved. Marcus looked at his forearm again, then back at their faces. 3 little girls with their mother's coloring. He didn't know that yet, but he would, pale and freckled and red-haired. And yet there was something in the way Zoe set her jaw, something in the tilt of Riley's head, something in the directness of Cora's gaze that made the air leave his body slowly, like a tire going flat. He had spent 11 years telling himself that Ezra Carter was gone. He had built an entire life on top of that fact. He had raised Aria, built his contracting business from nothing, bought a house with a yard and a porch and a lemon tree in the back that Aria loved, and all of it had been constructed on the foundation of she is gone and she is not coming back. He had believed that. He had believed it because the alternative was believing something too complicated to survive. "Can I walk you back to your mother?" he asked. Zoe tilted her head. "Why?" "Because you wandered off, and she's probably worried sick." He picked up the box of honey oats and put it in his cart, kept his hands moving so they would not shake, and because I'd like to meet her. The 3 girls looked at each other one more time. Then Zoe nodded, and they turned and walked toward aisle 7, and Marcus followed them with his heart doing something violent inside his chest. He smelled her before he saw her. That specific scent, cedar and something sweet, something he had never been able to name, hit him at the entrance to the aisle, and his cart actually stopped rolling because his hands locked around the handle. She had her back to him. She was reading the back of a pasta sauce jar, one foot slightly turned in the way she had always stood, her dark red hair cut shorter now, just past her jaw, wearing a yellow dress that matched the girl's scrunchies. Fair-skinned and slight, the way he remembered, and on her left forearm, hanging at her side, he could see it. The compass rose, and beneath it, in small, precise letters, Marcus. "Mama," Cora called out. Ezra Carter turned around. For a full 3 seconds, neither of them breathed. She looked the same. Older, yes, 11 years will do that, but the same. The same wide green eyes, the same slight gap between her front teeth, the same way her face went completely still when she was trying to hold herself together. She went completely still now. "Marcus," she said, not a question, just his name, released like something she had been holding underwater for a long time. "Ezra," his voice broke on the second syllable. The girls looked between them. Zoe crossed her arms. "You two know each other." Neither of them answered. "Drop a comment right now. What do you think happened between these two? I need to know your theories before we go any further." They ended up in the Kroger parking lot because neither of them could think of a better place to go, and neither of them could make themselves leave. The girls sat on the curb, eating the granola bars Ezra produced from her purse with the efficiency of a woman who had learned to carry emergency snacks at all times, and Marcus and Ezra stood 6 feet apart beside his truck, like two people who were afraid of what would happen if the distance between them got any smaller. "They found you," she said. Her voice was careful, controlled. "They did." He kept his eyes on the girls. Watching them was easier than watching her. Zoe noticed the tattoo. A sound came out of Ezra that might have been a laugh or might have been something else entirely. "Of course she did. She notices everything. She's been noticing everything since she was 18 months old." "They look like you," he said. It came out quieter than he intended. "I know," she paused, "but if you look at them long enough." "I know," he said, because he already had. He had spent the entire walk from aisle 4 to aisle 7 looking, cataloging, finding himself in 3 small faces that weren't supposed to exist. The way Zoe squared her shoulders, the way Riley went still and watchful, the way Cora led with questions instead of caution. He knew all 3 of those things because he did all 3 of those things. "Are they mine?" he asked, flat, direct, the only way he knew how to ask something that would break him either way. The parking lot went quiet in a way that had nothing to do with noise. Ezra closed her eyes. When she opened them, she looked directly at him for the first time since she had turned around in that aisle, and he saw everything she had been carrying written plainly across her face. "Yes," she said, "they are." Marcus turned away from her. He walked 3 steps toward the truck and then stopped because there was nowhere to go. He pressed both hands flat against the hood and stood there, breathing, feeling 11 years rearrange themselves inside his chest into a shape he didn't recognize. "How," he said, not a question about biology, a question about everything else. "I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks after I left." Her voice was steady in the way that voices are steady when someone has rehearsed a conversation 10,000 times in their head. "I know that doesn't justify it. I know nothing justifies it, but I found out right when everything else happened, and I panicked, and I made the worst decision of my life." "You disappeared," he said. "I thought something happened to you. I filed a missing persons report, Ezra. I spent 8 months," he stopped, pressed harder against the hood. 8 months. "I know. 8 months thinking you were dead." "I know, Marcus." He turned around then. She was standing with her arms wrapped around herself, and her green eyes were bright, and she looked exactly like someone who had known this moment was coming for 11 years and had dreaded it and needed it in equal measure. "Why?" he asked, just that, one word. She breathed in slowly. because I was 23 years old and terrified, because my mother had just been diagnosed with late-stage cancer and I had to go back home to handle it. And the night I was going to tell you, you got that call from your brother and you had to fly to Atlanta, and then everything happened so fast, and I kept thinking I would tell you when things calmed down, and they never calmed down." She pressed her lips together. "And then I was in Memphis with my dying mother and 3 newborns, and no sleep and no money, and I was so deep into the choice I had made that I didn't know how to come back from it." "You could have called." "I know. You could have sent a letter. You could have called my mother. You could have done literally anything, Ezra." "I know," her voice finally cracked. "I know, Marcus. I have known that every single day for 11 years. You think I don't know that?" He looked at his daughters. Zoe was explaining something to her sisters with great authority, using a granola bar as a pointer. Riley was listening with intense focus. Cora was watching him and Ezra with the expression of someone who understood more than they were supposed to. Cora met his eyes. She gave him a small, uncertain wave. Something inside Marcus Webb's chest split open. He raised his hand and waved back. "If you're watching this and feeling every single word, like the video and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today." He met his daughters properly in that parking lot, still warm from the afternoon sun, with shopping carts rolling past and a man loading mulch into a pickup 3 spaces down. Ezra stood to the side and let it happen, which was the right thing to do and also clearly cost her something. Zoe interrogated him. That was the only word for it. She stood directly in front of him, arms crossed, red curls catching the light, and asked him where he lived, what he did for work, whether he had any other children, what his favorite color was, whether he thought pineapple belonged on pizza, and whether he had ever broken a promise to someone he loved. He answered all of them honestly, including the last one. "Once," he said, "a long time ago, I promised someone I would always be there, but they left before I could keep it." Zoe considered this. "That's not really breaking a promise," she said finally, "if they left." "No," he agreed quietly, "I guess it's not." Riley sat beside him on the bump of his truck and showed him a drawing she had been working on in a small notebook she pulled from her pocket, a house with a very large tree in front and 3 stick figures on the roof. She did not explain the drawing. She just held it up for him to see and then put it away as if sharing it was enough. Cora held his arm and studied the compass to 2 with the focused intensity of a scientist examining a specimen. She traced the letters of her mother's name with 1 small fingertip and then looked up at him and said, "Does it hurt, the tattoo?" "Getting it did," he said, "not anymore." "Why did you get it?" He looked across the parking lot at Ezra, who was looking at the sky. "Because I wanted to remember someone." "But you didn't forget her," Cora said. "It wasn't a question." "No," he said, "I didn't forget her." Cora nodded seriously, like this confirmed something she had already suspected, and went back to studying the compass. They were extraordinary, all 3 of them. He had been a father for 6 years. His daughter Aria was with her grandmother this weekend, which he was now understanding was not a coincidence the universe had arranged, or maybe it was exactly that, and he understood children. He understood their weight and their specific gravity, the way they anchor you to the earth in ways you didn't expect when you signed up for the job. But these 3, he had known them for 45 minutes and he already felt it, that pull, that terrifying, irreversible pull. He was going to love them. He could already see that, straight ahead, inevitable as a wall. He was also furious. Those 2 things lived inside him simultaneously, side by side, and he was too old and too tired and had been through too much to pretend otherwise. When the girls were distracted, Zoe had discovered a colony of ants near the curb and was running what appeared to be a formal scientific investigation. He walked back to where Ezra was standing. "I have a daughter," he said. "Aria, she's 6. I've been raising her alone since her mother and I split up 3 years ago." Ezra's eyes softened. "What's she like?" "She's incredible." A pause. "She's going to lose her mind when she meets her sisters." The word sisters landed between them like a stone, dropped in still water. Marcus, Ezra said carefully, I'm not asking you for anything. I want you to know that. I'm not here for money. I'm not here to blow up your life. We moved to Columbus 3 months ago. My mother passed 3 years ago, and I had been teaching school in Memphis, and then I got a position here, and I didn't know you were here. I didn't move here because of you. I know, he said. She blinked. You know. Ezra, I know you. The thing you were always worst at was strategy. He almost smiled. Almost. If you had moved here on purpose, you would have researched everything first. You would have had a plan. You don't have a plan. She let out a breath that was half a laugh. I never had a plan. No, you never did. They stood there. Cars moved around them. The girls were now deeply engaged with the ants. I want to be in their lives, he said. I want to be their father, legally, officially, in every way that matters. He turned to look at her directly. That's not negotiable. That's not something I'm asking permission for. Those are my daughters, and I've already lost 11 years. I know, she said. I'm not going to fight you on that, Marcus. I would never. I know you wouldn't, he exhaled. But I also need you to understand that I'm angry. I'm going to be angry about this for a while, and I need you to be okay with that while we figure out how to do this right. For them. Ezra nodded. Her jaw was tight. Her eyes were wet. I can do that. Okay. Okay, she echoed. Zoe looked up from the ant colony. Are you two done arguing? She called across the parking lot. We weren't arguing, Marcus said. You were doing the thing adults do where they talk quiet and stiff instead of yelling, Zoe said. That's worse than arguing. She stood up and brushed off her knees. Riley thinks you should come to dinner. So does Cora. I'm still deciding. Marcus looked at Riley and Cora. Both of them were watching him with those wide, careful hazel eyes. He looked at Ezra. She shrugged, a gesture so familiar it hit him somewhere behind the ribs. The final vote is always Zoe's, she said. That's just how it works. He turned back to his oldest daughter, oldest by 4 minutes. He would learn later and never let her sisters forget it, and said, What's it going to take to get your vote? Zoe studied him for a long moment. The ants continued their work beside her shoe. Tell me one true thing, she said, about yourself, something real. He thought about it, not the practiced answer, not the safe one, something real. I drove 40 minutes out of my way today to get one specific brand of cereal because my daughter eats it every single morning and I never want her to reach for it and find it isn't there, he said. I've been doing that for 4 years. I'll probably do it for the rest of my life. Zoe stared at him. Then she walked across the parking lot, past her mother, and stood in front of him and said, Okay, you can come to dinner. If Zoe just broke your heart a little bit, you are not alone. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story that hits this hard. Dinner was pasta and garlic bread and a great deal of noise. The girls argued about everything, who got the chair closest to the window, whether oregano was a legitimate spice or a conspiracy, who had seen the most ants at the Kroger, and Marcus sat at a table in Ezra's small, warm apartment in a neighborhood he had driven through 100 times without stopping, and he ate pasta, and he watched his daughters argue, and he felt something he had not felt in 11 years. Not happiness exactly, something more complicated than that, something with grief still wound through it, and anger still banked underneath it, and underneath all of that, something that felt dangerously close to whole. At one point, Zoe looked across the table at him and said, without any preamble, You're darker than us. Zoe, Ezra said sharply. I'm just saying what's true, Zoe said, unbothered. It's not an insult. I'm just saying it out loud because I think it's better to say things out loud than to not say them. She looked at Marcus. Is that okay? Marcus looked at this child, his child, who at 9 years old had already figured out something most adults spent their whole lives avoiding, and he said, Yeah, that's okay. We used to wonder, Riley said quietly from his left, about our dad. We knew our dad wasn't white because Mama said so, but we didn't know what he looked like. The table went still. Ezra was staring at her pasta. What did you picture? Marcus asked. Riley thought about it carefully. Tall, she said, I always pictured someone tall. I pictured someone with a loud laugh, Cora said. I pictured someone who kept their promises, Zoe said. She said it plainly, without accusation, and that somehow made it worse. Marcus set down his fork. He looked at all three of them, one at a time. I didn't know about you, he said. I want you to know that. I would have been there from the beginning if I had known. I want you to know that too. They looked at him, then they looked at their mother. Ezra met his eyes over the top of three red-haired heads and held them, and in that look was everything she could not say at the dinner table. The apology, the guilt, the relief, the terror of being truly seen after 11 years of hiding. Zoe picked up her fork. Okay, she said, and that was that. After dinner, the girls showed him their room, one room, 3 beds, drawings covering every inch of the walls, a bookshelf so full it had started a second layer of books in front of the first. Riley showed him her notebooks. Cora showed him the small compass she kept on her nightstand, rose gold and scratched from use. Zoe showed him nothing, but she sat on her bed and watched him with those sharp, serious eyes and asked him 4 more questions, and he answered all 4 honestly. He left at 9 o'clock. Ezra walked him to the door. They stood in the doorway for a moment, not quite inside and not quite out. I'll have my lawyer draw up paperwork for formal recognition, he said. I'd like to be on record as their father as quickly as possible. I'll cooperate with everything, she said. I know, he picked up his keys, then put them back down. Ezra, for what it's worth, the tattoo. She looked at her forearm. I thought about covering it, he said quietly. About 3 years after you left, I made an appointment and everything, and then I didn't go. She looked up at him. Her green eyes were doing the thing they had always done when she was trying not to cry. She looked slightly to the left, at the middle distance, and breathed slowly through her nose. Why didn't you go? She asked. Because covering something up doesn't make it not true, he said. It just makes it harder to see. He picked up his keys again. Good night, Ezra. Good night, Marcus. He drove home through Columbus with his window down and the night air moving through the truck, and when he pulled into his driveway and sat in the dark with the engine off, he pressed his forearm against the steering wheel and felt the slight raised texture of old ink under his skin. A compass rose, a name. He had spent 11 years thinking it pointed toward something lost. He was beginning to understand it had been pointing forward the whole time. He did not sleep that night. He lay on his back in the dark and stared at the ceiling and thought about 11 years. About the missing persons report he had filed at the Third Precinct on a Tuesday afternoon, speaking to a detective named Flores who had kind eyes and who called twice over the following months with updates that never amounted to anything. About the box he had packed of her things, a green scarf, a dog-eared copy of Giovanni's Room, a small ceramic dish she had kept on her side of the sink and put in his closet and never thrown away. About the night he had met Aria's mother, 2 years after Ezra disappeared, and how he had liked her genuinely and tried his absolute best, and how trying your absolute best is sometimes not enough. He thought about the word father, how it had come to him gradually with Aria, not all at once, but in pieces. The first time she reached for his hand in a parking lot without being asked. The first time she called him daddy in front of strangers. The first time she was sick and called for him at 2 in the morning and he came and kept coming and never once wanted to be anywhere else. He thought about how it had come to him all at once today in a Kroger parking lot in about 45 seconds. 3 times simultaneously, like being handed a debt you didn't know you owed and discovering you desperately, urgently wanted to pay it. He thought about Zoe saying, I pictured someone who kept their promises, the flatness of it, the honesty of it, the way a 9-year-old could take 11 years of complicated adult wreckage and reduce it to one sentence that cut straight through. He was going to keep every promise he made from this day forward. He already knew that. He had known it in the parking lot. He had known it at the dinner table. He had known it when Cora held his arm and traced his tattoo and asked if it still hurt, and he had told her the truth, not anymore, and then felt the lie of it, because it did still hurt. It had never stopped hurting, but the nature of the hurt had just changed in a way he did not yet have words for. He called Aria's grandmother the next morning. "Hey, Mom," he said when she picked up. "Tell Aria I have something to tell her when she gets home. Tell her it's the kind of news that changes everything, the good kind." There was a pause on the line. Then his mother said, "Marcus, what happened?" He leaned against his porch railing and looked at the lemon tree in his backyard, yellow and full and recklessly alive. "I found something I thought I'd lost," he said. "Turns out it found me." If this story stayed with you, if Marcus and those three girls got into your heart and set up camp, then hit that subscribe button right now and leave a comment below telling me which moment hit you the hardest. Was it Zoe's final vote? Was it Riley saying she pictured someone tall? Was it Marcus waving back at Cora in that parking lot? Tell me. I read every single one. Share this video with someone who needs to believe that lost things can find their way home, and I will see you in the next story.